So what we got here is a 90 horsepower 1999 Yamaha outboard motor. The model number, and I can see it right down here, is, I believe this is the model number up top, C90TLRY. We've owned this boat since 2006. I bought it used. I bought it abused. The lady had it about 6 years, and we've taken great care of it. One thing I did not know is that for these models, and maybe several other models, you need to replace the impeller that picks up water and sends water for cooling up here. And you know, that's just something I just didn't know. I knew how it worked, but I didn't know that you had to replace the impeller. There's a rubber impeller wheel in there, and you can buy these kits and replace them. Now mine hasn't come in yet. I ordered the OEM one off of Amazon. You can get them at your Yamaha dealer or whatever. Of course, I have no affiliation with Amazon at all. But get this, you have to pull off the lower foot, and then you pull out the drive shaft that comes out of there. And of course, I've watched some YouTube videos on how to do this, but I've never done it myself. So let's do it together. There's a plug right here. I was able to pry off just with my finger, if not a flathead screwdriver, and we're going to lay that aside. And what that's going to allow you to do, it's going to allow you to access the nut that's in there, that's held on by the anode. Now your anode, you know, takes care of the sacrificial anode and also helps set the guide for the boat if it's off a little ways to the left or right. Sounds like I'm getting delivery by UPS or Amazon right now. It's probably the impeller. So you hear the beeping yourself. Let me go check that and see. I'll come right back. How coincidental is that? So that's exactly what it was. You get your Yamaha OEM kit, and here's the part number for it. 692WOO78-02-00, and this is for a 2-stroke 90 horsepower 1999. I know the parts are similar on similar years. See, it's all sealed up here. Let's take a look what's inside. We may have to continue this after the storm comes in. I don't know if you can hear that thunder. Let me describe for you what's happening with the boat. We're able to start it just fine. It's able to idle just fine. It's not kicking into full acceleration mode. It seems like it's in limp mode is what's happening. Almost like it's missing cylinders or something. And I've checked other things, and I also looked at, there's a pipe right here on the other side where, you know, water or stream will come out. Nothing's coming out that side. So I know that the water area is plugged a good bit. So in your box, you'll get, you know, an inventory in the OEM. You get this cover, and you get some gaskets, you get some bolts. But here's the impeller that you'll get. And this is likely the problem if you know your impeller is breaking apart or needs to be replaced. I'll pull that out there. It's made of rubber, as you can see. Just as simple as that. And they dry out supposedly over time. It's a keyed rubber thing in there, and you'll see the key later that you need to slip it on the drive shaft and get it going. But anyway, so glad my parts came. That's great. Let's get started on how to take this apart again, where we were going a minute ago. You got one bolt in here, then you got this bolt here, you got a bolt under here, and for me, this one in here is a 12 millimeter. So I'm going to start with that one. And I believe the other one is a 15 millimeter. I already fitted it up earlier. Like I said, this also holds on your anode, but this has to come out because it's part of the attachment of this foot, this lower foot. Fits right in there. This is your zinc anode. In the case, mine's zinc, I believe. So let me get you in here a little closer. The anode was down here, and I took it off, and there was the bolt that was deep inside there. And I had said that this was a 12 millimeter, and that's indeed what it was. Then I've got these bolts right here. 1, 2, and 2 on the other side makes 4. So we're going to take those off, and then this should come apart right along that line. Yep. I was able to get the head of my socket in there. Bolt 1. See the head of the socket wrench is almost hitting here because these bolts are so close. So you have to take it slow. So this is where you're glad that you watched the complete video, because there's another bolt that's right up in here, right beyond that bolt that you unscrewed from the top. There's another one. See it right there? So I'm going to take it off, and I've actually moved my bolt that I'm keeping in down there to my lower bolt. I've got it a few rounds in there. Undid from the top. All right. Now we'll see if I can persuade it to come off. There we go. Drop just like they said. And that bolt that I had down here, more importantly, indeed did catch it. So I'm going to push it up a little bit. And I'm going to, with my fingers, take out that other bolt. Push out those few rounds. Of course, this is easier if you have a helper, and easier if you have a table under it, and easier if you just pay to have someone do all this. But I didn't do that. There's that last bolt that was holding to catch it. It's one of the four. It was the one that was opposite of this. So now you'll see the drive shaft come out of here and everything, just like I'm seeing for the first time. I already see a hose I need to disconnect before I pull this out. So we're going to stop. We're going to figure out what that hose is. And the drive shaft pull it out just like textbook they said it would. And here's your lower end. First I'm going to go lay it down on a safe working surface. Alright, we've got this set up, well, in a cardboard box, but so we can see it. This was the piece that we saw outside. It indeed is a guide to get the gear shifter back on. So that's the gear shifter. Here's your water pump and everything, and your drive shaft coming down. We're going to take this apart. As I understand it now, this is for your water pressure, for your speedometer. And I don't have a speedometer on my boat, so I think it just goes up in dead ends at the top. Let's take out these 4 bolts and get moving. And I'm going to guess that this is probably 12 millimeter again, because it looks like it. Maybe it's a 15, but it's a 12 for sure. Let's see if this cardboard box holds up. Bolt number 1, and then it's got some guides on it too. Let me show you that. Those little metal guides that fit into the plastic right in here. Bolt number 2, a little shorter. Every time you run your engine, look for the water to be coming out of the telltale, is what it's called. The telltale is a little hose that comes up and out of the water cooling system and squirts out the back of your boat to let you know that your water cooling system is working appropriately. So I'm not a mechanic. Here we go. Be careful because there's a gasket in there. Just lightly do a little prying. And now we're about to, just like that, lay that down. Now we'll get this housing here. Well, I'm looking at my impeller. Pretty bad. I started to say all the fins were intact. As you might be able to see there on the camera, that one's intact. That one's busted off. You can see the leg missing there. That one looks to be intact. That one's almost intact. So I've got two of the 6 fins intact, the third one almost intact, and then 3 of them totally already sheared off. Here's the new one, and here's what it looks like. Other parts need to be replaced, and here's why others say to do it, because this spinning gets wear and tear on the associated pieces that it's rubbing on. And that's not good. To get this up, you need to do a little gentle prying. This metal piece we're going to replace too. I may have to redo this because my cardboard's falling apart. So let me find a better way to prop this up and we'll come right back. This metal skid piece is going to be replaced because it's in the kit. and the gasket as well, so no worries there. And remember, it's keyed, so you can't really spin it. You can spin the shaft just a little bit before the propeller starts to spin. And there we go. Actually spin it. Let's get you in here close and show you the damage now. And this metal piece here just simply pries off. And then you got the bottom gasket under there. And like I said, this metal piece gets worn. You can just buy the impeller, but every recommendation that I've seen says go ahead and get the kit. Replace this because it's going to be grooved. If you can see it here, get you in closer. A couple of sizes in here. That one's just right. You can hit it like that, and it'll come out. I got the right size screwdriver just under the edge of it. So then this will slide off. Except for the bottom gasket. And we'll get off the bottom gasket with a little tug. In your kit, you're going to have this new piece of metal that goes on here. It also seems like it can go on there only one way because it's keyed with holes. And so that hole and that hole line up with those two studs. So we slide that back on. Now we're ready to put this key back in here. Woodruff key. And you put that back in there just by simply tapping with a hammer and putting the moon side in first, the half round in first. Once you get the rubber impeller in there, you'll see the key is slotted, or this is slotted for the key to where it can only go on one way. It actually has a rubber stopper at the top, so it has to go on only one way down. Before we do that though, we're also going to give it a coating of silicone grease in there. Again, silicone's not going to degrade that rubber one bit. It's compatible with it. And we're also going to put some on the surface. Now that might not last too long, but at least there's something there. And this is why you don't run an impeller dry, I've learned. And by that, you don't start your engine even for a second without having water hooked up to it. So you can hook a water hose up to it with a special attachment, so you can, with the engine flusher attachment, and that's going to put water in here. So you're not only putting water up through your coolant system, but you're giving this impeller some water lubrication to turn. And a new boat owner, or maybe even an old boat owner like myself, doesn't learn this until they've owned their boat for 20 years. Now, I haven't run mine but for a second as I started it, but now I realize that that's not even good. Just to see if the battery works, it's not good. To even do that, you should hook it up to water first. Have that water running. I'm going to put a little bit more silicone grease on this. Yep. Now we're back in business with an impeller. See, when the boat blade propeller is spinning from the drive shaft up top, it's riding on that metal just like you see there. And now you see why it's important not to run that engine unless there's water in it. All right, I put that gasket down there, like I said, before I put the impeller on. But you don't have to do that, apparently, because I'm going to show you, you could just stick it to this. So I'm going to take this new bell housing and I'm going to put it in here, and basically it'll line up. It's a little bit offset. And then there's also a metal flange right there. That metal flange will go into that groove. You'll see that when you, actually it's on the other side, that groove fits better into it. And you'll see that when you put it together, and it'll also line up everything just so where the hole is centered. And if it's not centered, put it on the other side and line it up. And when you look in there, the plastic flanges will be smooth with the hole. So once you do that, you want to look at what you're going to do down here and line up everything to where it's in the same shape. So it's going to go on the shaft down through there. And as you put this down here and you get to this level, here's the thing. Your impeller is going to be wider than that housing. So actually turn this drive shaft clockwise while you're spinning that. And the only way you can do that is actually if you hadn't taken your propeller off, is to get this up off the floor a little bit. So now we've got this water sender, inlet, outlet up. And then you turn this counterclockwise, or clockwise rather. And the blades of the impeller will bend a little bit, and they'll go up in your housing. And that's how you get that on. They bend and they curve while they're in there. And because you're doing it in the clockwise fashion that I did it, they bend in the right direction. So make sure you got that right. If you think I'm smart, no, I just watched some other YouTube videos. So don't ask me too many questions. Our kit, even though our bolts look pretty darn good, they come with 4 brand new OEM bolts. So that's what we're going to use. OEM kit, make sure you get the one that's right for your boat. I'm putting a little bit more of that water-soluble grease on there. In this case, I guess you could put regular grease, but I don't want it near my gaskets. I don't want it near my impeller, because regular petroleum grease can degrade. So I'm not going to bore you with this too much. We're going to put all 4 of these in. Now we won't bore you with this too much. As soon as you get those tightened up, you're done with the job for the most part, but then we'll be putting it back on the boat here in a minute. And that's it. All we did was we snugged these up. We didn't turn it too tight because this is plastic after all. I'd clean some of this up, and you clean up any areas that you wish, to do. But as you can see here, we've got the housing all back together, and when we turn this, the blade turns smoothly. It's the next morning, and I've got good news to report. I last night came out here and looked at the water pickup tube, which is right up in there. That small pipe. And I was afraid, as I said, that some of the fins from the impeller had gotten sucked up in there. But that proved not to be the case, I don't believe. I had a small rubber tube that I just placed over that, and I was able to blow through it, and it easily, air came out of the telltale. So here's the telltale I mentioned earlier. The other thing you want to do is you want to get your water pickup tube for your speedometer. You go ahead and take that off the boat. That's probably a good practice before you ever pull this. And mine separated just out of that. And I'm able to put it back together after the footer's on. So I'm going to put this back on here before I ever get to my footer. And put the tie wrap back onto it so it doesn't come off. Doing it one-handed. for when you slide this in to the drive shaft and everything. You'll see what I'm talking about in a moment. The other thing you want to do is you want to find that gear, that thing that lines up the gearbox, that piece that fell out earlier and I didn't know what it was for. It goes right up in here and over this gear shifter to help line everything up. It goes right up in those grooves to help line everything up. So that's how that goes. I'm going to slide my drive shaft into the biggest area there. I'm trying to get that drive shaft to go together up top. And I finally got it up in there. I say finally because you're not going to see my previous takes, because I edited those out and I showed you my lessons learned. The other thing you want to do is make sure that that bolt that goes to your anode rod was already in that footer, because it's harder to get down that hole. Learn from my lessons and you won't have edits in your YouTube video. Put a second bolt in there and get a few rounds on it. Also, your pickup tube for your speedometer, make sure that it popped out this hole in the back. Mine didn't, and in between cuts right there, I reached my hand down in there and was able to pull it out. Here's a further tip. This is actually a 14 millimeter. So get your smallest ratchet that you have if you have a 14. And that head won't hit the same way a bigger one does. And tiny bit of grease in the threads there. I'm going to set this whichever direction I want to, but mine's going to be straight. I don't remember if that's exactly how it was, because you can change the direction of the boat a little bit with that. But it's showtime. Hopefully it's still primed from the other day. Neutral. Look at that. The telltale's working. So she started up just fine. Got a good telltale coming out, meaning there's no blockages in there. That's great. Get past this no wake zone. We'll run her out. And here we go. Running great. Like, share, and subscribe.